Hi everyone, now that the new Challengers is released, it's time to go back to each of the fighters and talk about how to use them out of the box, the way most people will have their first experiences with the Hyperjuken card game. We start this series with Lucy the Shizu, the red fighter of the new Challengers. Lucy is the quintessential red fighter, perfect for both beginners to Hyperjuken and people who just enjoy the fundamentals of the game. Lucy's primary goal is to hit her hyper form and gain many of Red's more advantageous qualities at once. Her attacks all gain a +2 power buff, meaning they are doing between 33% and 100% more damage. They also gain chip equal to their level, meaning the stronger that they are, the more they hurt, even when blocked. She also gains the ability to draw a card once per turn should her hyper reach max. Card advantage being a massive boon in Hyperjuken. Outpace your opponent. To get there, Lucy has to first reach her hyper form, but she has tools to get there really quickly, all by herself, starting with her burst fighter form. When you initiate combat as Lucy, raise your hyper too. On base level, that's over a fifth of the way there, but it's not the whole picture. Lucy has her signature tactic, the Most Excitable Girl. Usable as both a setup effect during your prepare phase and as an act effect during combat, the Most Excitable Girl raises your hyper 2, and if you have a copy of the Most Excitable Girl in play as a buff, draw 1. As a buff is where this card really shines. It reduces your hyper by 3 to a minimum of 6. Use the Most Excitable Girl, initiate combat, you're 2/3 of the way there, and only need to raise your hyper by 2 to become Hyper Lucy. This also applies to Lucy's hyper form too, where it makes it much easier for her to draw that additional card and gain momentum. So let's talk about your big hitters. You have 3 cards that constitute your main aggressive force: Burst Power Strike, Burst Takedown, and Breakthrough Strike. Burst Power Strike is a level 1 attack that raises your hyper 1 and gains the same power as a level 2 attack if your fighter is a hyper fighter. Straightforward, hits like a truck, more so with Lucy, and doesn't cost you ki in the long term on virtue of being level 1. It's a reliable and dependable card. Burst Takedown is from the same series as Burst Power Strike, gaining an ability under the condition of your fighter being a hyper fighter. This one is a little more interesting, however, as it can put your opponent in a really bad position. If your fighter is a hyper fighter, your opponent has to pay 2 ki to block it. Either they don't want to pay the cost, meaning it gets through with 8 power from Lucy, they pay, take 2 chip damage from Lucy, and you've locked them out of something, or they can't pay the cost. The last one becomes more likely late game if you can manage multiple burst takedowns in succession. Could be a game ender. Speaking of game enders, Breakthrough Strike. Your opponent can't use the breaker effects of cards revealed as combat damage from this attack, and its damage cannot be prevented. If this one makes contact, and Lucy is a hyper fighter, it's 8 damage. No fuss, no muss. Should you find yourself fighting Taichi, Lucy is packing Impassioned Flying Knee. Standard stats for a level 1, but if you pay 1 ki, it can neutralize a debuff. So if you find yourself with a debuff sticking because you couldn't block it, you still have an out. Even if you just draw into it though, Impassioned Flying Knee is still a decent attack. Raise your hyper 1 regardless of what happens. Speaking of ki, Lucy is packing in her arsenal a package of cards that ramp her ki, and both of her cards give her benefits from doing so. Red Ki Flow Form 1 and 2 both have a continuous effect with the condition of a card being sent to your ki pool due to one of your effects. Ki Flow Form 1 raises your hyper 2, while Ki Flow Form 2 allows you to target 2 attack cards in your exhaust and shuffle them into your arsenal. Ki Flow Form 1 is great for raising your hyper fast. If you get an additional card into your ki pool, that's all the hyper that Lucy needs to reach hyper form should she use the Most Excitable Girl and initiate combat. And as a hyper fighter, Ki Flow Form 1 will be Lucy's most consistent source of large amounts of hyper. But the real star is Keyflow Form 2. Keyflow Form 2 allows you to push cards into your arsenal that you really need to gain an advantage in combat. For Lucy, this will typically be whatever of the 3 heavy hitters she needs and Energetic Kick to reuse both Keyflow Form 1s, or something to answer your opponent's board. Crafting your arsenal like this is in turn crafting your hand, regardless of which player initiates combat. Even with Hyperdukin's rule set allowing handcrafting natively, this is a large benefit. You can really set the pacing of the game and play to it. So let's get to the cards that will set off both Keyflow Form 1 and 2, starting with Energetic Kick. Energetic Kick is a level 0 attack with a hit effect to place the top card of your arsenal into your key pool, and is a bit more complex than it appears on face value. You could throw it down, give your opponent a card that is very much worth blocking, bait out a block card. They don't want you to gain additional key, and everything else that entails. Even early game when your exhaust is bare, it's still too hyper. By baiting out a block, you increase the likelihood that something stronger like Impassion Flying Knee, or if you can manage a level 2 attack either of those, will make contact for moderate to large amounts of damage. But Energetic Kick is also key ramp, and that is very beneficial to you. More key means more level 2 attacks. This is partially why we want to target Energetic Kick with Keyflow Form 2, to use it later when you've established. But it's also worth considering that you can play other cards, other level 0 and level 1 attacks. Then after, hopefully one of them is baited out of block, spring Energetic Kick on them. Hope they've run out of blocks, and Energetic Kick hits. The other card that can gain key is a block card, Energetic Shudo Uke. Red typically only blocks when necessary. It'd rather keep up momentum with attacks. But that doesn't mean it isn't packing great blocks. Energetic Shudo Uke is super simple, but like tons of simple cards from every game, very potent. When it resolves, send it to your key pool. Your opponent just has to perform something worth blocking, and you're off to the races. Sets off both Keyflow forms, gives you additional key for level 2 attacks. Sometimes it's more beneficial to not use Energetic Kick early game, but focus on Energetic Shudo Uke. Allow it to get you into hyper form and ramp key, even if it's not shuffling things back in, just to get you into a good position. An ideal opening hand would look something like this. This will make your hyper meter 6 and give you 2 hyper. If you're game and really value getting into hyper form ASAP, you can initiate combat, raise yourself a further 2 hyper, then try to get that last 2. But you're susceptible to your opponent's effects lowering your hyper. It might be wiser to pace yourself. Hope your opponent doesn't initiate, then dig for more things that will raise your hyper to hit hyper form. That said, you're not always going to have an ideal hand, and even with digging, might not hit the most excitable goal till later, if ever. That is a massive blow. But something closer to this hand isn't the worst thing in the world. It's a total of 8 hyper, most of the way there. Next combat, ideally, you should have enough to get into hyper form, and you have gained additional key. With Lucy, so long as you hit the ground running and pace yourself, you should do well. Just concentrate on hitting hyper form, only blocking key attacks, and dealing as much damage as possible as consistently as possible. Red Burst Lucy is a very intuitive deck to play, so you shouldn't find too much trouble. If you liked today's video, remember to share, like, and subscribe. It really helps Hyperdukin grow. Check out SavageShizuGames.com to find all of Hyperdukin's cards so far, and how to play. Don't forget to come back next week for EX Blue El Eterno's Primer. Till next time, friends, thanks for watching.